Councilwoman Jennifer Vrancken.
And
did I say it right?
Nailed it, yes.
I've been practicing. It was one of my nervous moments. And Jason Neville from the Lafitte Greenway. I'm really excited when we were talking about things that we wanted to bring together today is we're making these roundtables conversations about things that are really taking place, actions that are happening in your community and around you. So that's what we wanted more. They're going to give us some presentations of the projects they're here representing to give you kind of a background of their expertise. But then we're going to open it up. We'll talk for a little while, and then we'll have questions from you as well. All right. So, Jason, I have yours up.
Okay.
Cool. And I will just click along.
Okay.
So you can sit and relax.
All right.
And just kind of
Sit and relax. I never get to do that. Okay. Well, welcome. My name is Jason Neville. I'm Executive Director of Lafitte Greenway Partnership. We're a nonprofit organization that was founded in 2006 to advocate for the creation of the Lafitte Greenway, which is a 2.6 mile linear park and bicycle path that connects the French Quarter to Mid-City. And here's a map of it. So to our right is the French Quarter. I'm going to go ahead and just stand up and say we go from French Quarter through Tremé, Lafitte, we cross Bayou St. John, we cross Carrollton Avenue. It currently ends here. This is the master plan from 2013, but it was intended always to go to the RTA Transit Center to create connections to Jefferson Parish.
Cool.
And that is actually, that half-mile extension is actually on the ballot for those of you who live in New Orleans on Proposition 2 on November 15th, which is this Saturday. So if you would like to see the Greenway completed, please vote yes on Prop 2. This is the original master plan. The route of the Greenway is very interesting. It's very seminal to the creation of the city of New Orleans itself. Many of us all know that New Orleans, which is the original city of New Orleans, which is the French Quarter, was founded on the Mississippi River for access to the river. But a lot of us, myself included, until 3 years ago when I started this job, didn't know that it was this spot on the Mississippi River because of its access to Bayou St. John, which goes to Lake Pontchartrain, which is not actually a lake, it's an estuary, which means it's open, and you can sail a little boat from inside Lake Pontchartrain to Bay St. Louis, past Mississippi Gulf Coast, and so forth. So when the city of New Orleans was founded in 1718, Bayou St. John is up there, and in 1796 the Spanish government built a canal. Let me back up. The Native Americans showed the European settlers that there was an overland route from Bayou St. John here to the city. So people would bring in goods through Bayou St. John, do a land portage, which means take them off a boat, walk them into the city. In 1796, the Spanish government built a new canal called the Carondelet Canal to connect Bayou St. John, which is a natural waterway, right to the back of the French Quarter. And it was there for 120 years. You can see a little turning basin there, a harbor. There was a harbor in the back of the French Quarter for 125 years, which is where basins, it was a turning basin for boats, and that's where modern day Basin Street is. The city continued to grow up all around the Carondelet Canal. And then I think we have some slides of showing what it looked like. So this is what the back of the French Quarter looked like for over a century. Then it got filled in, turned into a railroad line in the 1930s, 40s. It stayed a railroad line until, the next slide, please, until Katrina, when a group of people got together and said, what if we turn this abandoned rail line into a linear park, an open space that connected all these great communities in the heart of the city? This year, actually last week, was the 10th birthday of the Lafitte Greenway and the 20th anniversary of Katrina. As we've been doing, if you go back one slide, I want to give some credit to some folks that did come before our organization. How many of y'all know where the Claiborne Expressway Bridge is down in Tremé? Okay, so if you've been there, you probably know that that was an elevated expressway that was built right through the heart of a very thriving black community in New Orleans, on top of the heart of the commercial district, which is Claiborne Avenue. In the 1970s, a group of black architects called the Claiborne Avenue Design Team got together to develop some design ideas on how to repair the damage, some of the damage that was done by the expressway. And so they had a whole plan for what they could do under the bridge. And one of the ideas was, because the Claiborne Avenue intersects what was then the abandoned rail line, they had some ideas for a bike path on that abandoned rail line. So as we've been doing our history in the 10-year anniversary, The beginning of our story, we used to say it started in 2006 after Katrina, but now we say correctly that it started in 1976 with a group of African-American architects looking at ways to repair the damage of the Claiborne overpass. This is what it looked like. You can just scroll through a couple of these. This is what it looked like when people first started doing walks, community walks on the Greenway to get the idea going. 2 became a dozen became hundreds, hundreds became thousands, and it went from this to this. It went from this to this, and today it's the most used bike path in the city with 1,000 people a day. That goes up to 4,000 people a day during special events like Mardi Gras and Jazz Fest. 4,000 people a day, here's a factoid for you, council member. 4,000 people a day is about 15% of the daily car traffic on the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. So this is a bona fide transportation corridor. It's visited 500,000 times a year. Our organization, we're a nonprofit. We're a small but mighty nonprofit, hoping to be a medium-sized but mighty nonprofit sometime soon. We do events like theater, arts programming, things for youth and families, live music, public art that serves 12,000, the city's largest free outdoor fitness program that serves 1,500 people. So we do projects and programs that serve directly 12,000 people a year. We do lots of stormwater management, which I can tell you more about. This number 565 is now, as of yesterday, up to 765 with a goal of 1,000 by the end of next year. We do lots of green infrastructure, and there's been $360 million worth of new real estate development around the Greenway since it opened in 2015. The cost to build the Greenway was $7.8 million. So you can do the math on the return on investment to the city. We're just getting started. One of the things Veronica was saying is like, and I love the fact that many of you are eager to get to work making the world better. This project is 20 years in the making, and we're just kind of getting a certain amount of traction. And that's been humbling. When I look back at all the work that my predecessors did, because I've only been doing this for 3 years, I don't envy the people that started with a half dozen people doing a walk on an abandoned rail line, trying to get anyone to listen to this idea. I'm very fortunate to have come in when I did, when there was already a lot of tailwinds and I could start doing the stuff that I want to do, which includes, like I said, extending the Greenway. So the Greenway is 2.6 miles from here to here. It just ends behind the Winn-Dixie, unceremoniously behind the Winn-Dixie on Canal, Carrollton. The expansion, which is half a mile, correction, my board members like to call it a completion because we're completing something that was started 12 years ago. The completion will take it to Delgado, to City Park, past Rosedale Restaurant, and to Canal Boulevard, get to the RTA Cemetery Transit Center. So we're working on that. A few other things we're working on, just to click through, and then this will be the end. We're working on that. It's been so successful. People are now calling us saying, when can I get a Greenway in my neighborhood? Which is great. So we're working with architects to design a citywide network of greenways. We have a brand new master plan for the Greenway, which is beautiful. Here's an image of it showing stormwater parks that we're going to build on there. We're going to bring the first waterfall to New Orleans on the Lafitte Greenway. Yes, it's only going to be 3 feet tall, but it's still a waterfall. Bringing cool new bike pedestrian bridges. This one, if you go back one slide, this is the artist rendering, and this is the next one is a photo of me and the designer a month ago, so it's under construction now. How many of you all been to the farmers market, Thursday farmers market on the Greenway? Okay, that's where this is. Maybe you all have seen this. And a couple more. One that I'm really excited about. Last year we worked with our state legislature to create a Lafitte Greenway Economic Development District, which is the boundaries here. And the idea is to capture a portion of the $360 million in development over the past 10 years and dedicate a portion of it back into the Greenway into the neighborhoods around the Greenway for affordable housing, small business support, stormwater management, and bicycle pedestrian infrastructure. The city estimates that would generate $1.2 million a year. So this is the game changer where we start to do a value capture mechanism. We do public investments that create value, we capture that value, and we recycle it back into the community for equity-driven investments that will last in perpetuity and create a virtuous cycle of investment. We work with lots of partners. Last year, we changed our name from Friends of Lafitte Greenway to Lafitte Greenway Partnership to emphasize that partnerships are key to everything that we do. So here's just some of the partners we work with. And our biggest partner is you. So thank you for giving me a chance to talk about it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's awesome. Very cool.
And we have lots of them. But before we get to them, we're going to have Jennifer come up
All right.
and tell about her project, which she does many things as a councilwoman, but the one we asked her to speak about today is in Bucktown.
Yes, this was one of the more fun ones because, going over budget numbers, not so exciting. This is where you really get, to feed fulfillment from what we can do in government. So I grew up in Metairie, about a block from Lake Pontchartrain, which is an estuary, not an actual lake. So I used to bike ride along here all the time. So when I first came into office, 2015 was the year I got elected. So this piece of property is reclaimed water bottoms. It came to fruition before I got there, but you can see it was pretty empty. So like if you're in Bucktown and you're at R&O Seafood or Deanie's or something eating, what you usually see is this red roof. That's the Coast Guard station that serves this area. So normally people see the Coast Guard station, they don't even know there's land on the other side of the levee. And that was a real problem because we leased this, Jefferson Parish has leased this from the state for about 20 years. We haven't done a tremendous amount. So at the time I came in, there was one little covered pavilion. And we did, from a grant from Hurricane Katrina, we got a grant to put some boat slips out there because our historic fishing fleet based at Bucktown had gotten washed away. And so this gave Bucktown fishermen a place to base. So this is when I came into the picture. Okay, so I came in and I thought, let's do a farmer's market out there. Let's do something that starts getting the community over the levee to know there's a piece of property here. Well, I asked Mallory, who does all of my presentations, I said, put like a pitchfork on here or flames or something, because the worst public meeting I've had was at Bucktown Civic when I'm talking about a farmer's market and literally they are trying to kill me. They're like, they hated the idea, they didn't want a farmer's market, and I'm like, for real? Like some okra and some lettuce and what? What I didn't know was that the Bucktown neighborhood, a few years before I got into office, there was some kind of commercial development that they felt like was being pushed on the community in a sneaky way. It wasn't transparent, and they were going to build like an amusement park out here and a hotel and a bunch of commercial stuff, which resulted in litigation that the parish, was involved in. I didn't have that background. And so I was thinking people were hating the idea of a farmer's market. What they really didn't want was commercial. So I ended that meeting saying, okay, let's do this. You're not going to trust me because you thought people before me were sneaky. And so let's put something on paper. And if we can all look at it and you can see it and I can see it and we can point to it and be like, okay, this is our plan, then we're on the same page. And then you can hold me accountable and you know where I'm going. So that's what we did. So the first way we started the discussion was actually that one before, a vision plan. Just creating the ideas, like public meetings, we had surveys, and we said, what do you want and what do you not want? I know you don't want commercial, but what kind of ideas do you want? And so we created this vision plan, Bucktown Harbor Vision Plan. It just really took the ideas that people said they wanted out here, like maybe a community garden or, the ideas, and said, okay, this is the vision we have for this space. Then the next slide is, okay, how do you formalize that? So we got a landscape architect in, Joey Fur Designs, he's awesome. And he really mapped it out with his expertise to know where did these pieces of activity fit? How did they flow? How would you walk through the site, bike through the site? So then we got a master plan. And this again is transparent for the community to say, okay, yes, we like all of those ideas. We like how this is, planned out. And so it's a bunch of different projects, and funding is always an issue. So I didn't have the funding to bring this master plan to life, but you do it one thing at a time. And so we started with the pavilions. The Bucktown Boardwalk is another you'll see. So essentially all of these projects were on my radar at the start, and we were going to do them one at a time as we could get some funding. So the next slide will show kind of those initial efforts. We said we're going to do a boardwalk. This is simply going to be a boardwalk where you can walk along, The marsh area that we created, this is a marsh area that sits, right against the landmass, and then this is the lake. So we said, let's do the boardwalk. Who's going to complain about a place where you can get out, have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee in the morning or whatever, and and get out and enjoy the lake? So that's where we started. So we broke ground. We found some funding, a grant fund that got this started, and then we're fortunate in Jefferson, our district council members do have district funds that they can put into projects. So this was, how we got this funded. So we built the boardwalk. So this is actually some of the pictures of it in existence now. We made it educational. Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation, now Pontchartrain Conservancy, they did all of the educational signage because we wanted people to get out here and also be able to learn about the lake, to learn about the marsh and the creatures that you might see out here. We do have gators, by the way. So this one is the covered pavilions because we said, okay, you want a place for people to get out of the sun, maybe come out here with their families and enjoy sitting out and enjoying the outdoors. So the next thing we pursued were just a few covered pavilions. That led to activity. And so the first thing we did was sunset on the Bucktown Boardwalk. We partnered, and you're so right, partnerships bring everything to fruition. So there was a beautification group in Jefferson. They said, let us do a party on the boardwalk and get people out here. We'll have wine and cheese and some music and just bring people here so they know this exists. And so that's how we started with the Bucktown Boardwalk, and some activities and drive-in movies and other things started out here. So then we said, okay, how do we get enough projects that it becomes really a momentum that we know this is going to continue? So Joey Fur Design helped us apply to the state of Louisiana Land and Water Conservation Fund. We were awarded a $1.25 million grant from the state, which is huge. And I always kid about it. I don't know if it's stereotypical or not, but as a woman, I love a good deal. I love a bargain. I wanted, the ability to turn my 1.25, because that was the local money I had cobbled together. Getting this $1.25 million grant, we doubled our money. So every one of my dollars became two. And so I looked for every grant opportunity where we could double or triple our money. So that's how we knew we would have funding to bring the next things to life. A kayak launch, a children's play area, and a canal to get comfortable with, teaching kayaking and canoeing. So that's how we pursued the next phase of things. I was like, I want something other than the Coast Guard station, to have something that kind of tells you, hey, there's something over here across the levee. And so we brainstormed and thought something like this that would be whimsical. It's essentially like a treehouse. So it's hard for me, who's not an architect or an engineer, to say, okay, this is what's in my head. And then the landscape architect was like, all right, I think I know what you're, doing. And he sketches it out and we get to a rendering. And then watching engineers actually engineer it and build it to life, it's like one of the most fantastic experiences, to have an idea in your head now go to being something in reality. And so there's a little elevator and a staircase that brings you up here. You look over the marsh. It's lit up at night. It like changes colors at night. It really has kind of become a beacon across the levee to tell people there's something over here. And then this was the biggest project we took on. So, the cost of everything over time goes up. So this ultimately was a $15.5 million project. The idea was Bucktown is on the eastern end. Bonneville boat launch is about a mile away to the west of, this is the New Orleans Parish line. So like the 17th Street Canal is between New Orleans and Jefferson. So right there, exactly, thank you. So Bucktown's right there, and then about a mile away is Bonneville. So we wanted to link these, and we wanted to be able to get in the water. I don't own a boat, so literally I can't get in Lake Pontchartrain unless I have a boat to go out on the boat ramps, the boat launch at Bonneville. We're like, how do we get kayakers, canoers? How do we get people safely out here? And how do we use this space? So the idea of a living shoreline was what we came up with. One, we knew it would be a test in resilience and multiple layers of defense, because anyone who lived through Katrina, one flood wall fails and your city, floods. And so, like, how do we put speed bumps in front of the levee to protect the storm action coming in, protect our levees, build back some marsh, which is better for the lake, and give us a place a blueway where we can kayak and canoe. So that was the idea. So again, I had about $4 million locally of Go Mesa funds from oil and gas revenue. I took my $4 million and we looked for every grant opportunity we could. We went to the state for $1 million. We applied for all of those other grants and cobbled together the $15 million, which basically is a 3-to-1 on the money that we started with. So we really were aggressive about pursuing grants. And that is now in fruition. So if you go out there, you'll see that living shoreline out there now. The one before it was, again, this was literally, I'm out at Bucktown one day and I see this guy and he's in the water and he's moving around. And then I saw him trying to get out and I went over and I'm like, do you need help? What's wrong? And he goes, yeah, I couldn't find a place to get out. He was canoeing in the lake. So again, that's when I thought, okay, we need like a formal place for people to get in and out of the lake. That is what this became. So we designed a kayak and canoe launch, a paddle canal. So if you're new at kayaking or canoeing, you can either go off that soft edge that's just, grass and dirt, or there's a formal launch. Either way, it lets you get into this paddle canal. There's no wave action. It's really easy. So like you can get comfortable with your strokes and then you go out toward the lake. This was us breaking ground just a few weeks ago on what will be a children's play area. Again, the idea for me is always, yes, recreation, but also education. And so we're going to use this to teach kids about the fact that we have a really strong fishing and shrimping community here. So it'll be a shrimp boat on top of this hill. And then there'll be, slides and nets and ropes and all kind of things for them to play on. So that's underway right now. And then next slide should be, so this is just kind of a summary of where we are, progress. You take it one step at a time. Just as you're saying, you can't do it all at once. So we started with the green space, we built the kayak launch and the living shoreline and the kayak and canoes, the birdhouse, and we've got the whole upper half, northern half of this property that we really haven't activated at all. But really our goal was, get it rolling, bring people out here, start to get enjoyment and quality of life and education, and we figure the rest will come. So that's where we are now.
Turn the lights back on so we can have a conversation. My first question for you both is just maybe a little about how, when you're reclaiming space that's been used in other ones, can you address like what are the processes and who you had to go through? So you're coming from a nonprofit standpoint, you're coming from the government standpoint. Where did people begin? They had the idea of the corridor. How do you find out who owns the land and what hoops you're jumping?
This is a nice, perhaps, duo to be up here because, so I wasn't there at the time, but in my understanding of the history was folks in the neighborhood got together, they literally started doing Saturday walks. When the idea became big enough, they went and approached their elected officials to make the case in a lot of the same way that you were saying. You started cobbling all the money together and started small. So most of the land was owned by the city of New Orleans. Some had been bought by some folks that wanted to build a movie production facility that went sideways. Some was owned by the railroads. So I don't know all the particulars except to say that once the idea bubbled up to a certain point, then conversations with elected officials started happening to try to get their support and start to identify the funding to make it happen. So the master plan was adopted on our end in 2013, the City of New Orleans master plan, and then the Greenway broke ground and completed November 6th. So we're literally just like 10 years. I've been saying, can you imagine how much, for the past couple of years, I'm like, it's come so far in less than 10 years. And as of last week, I can't say that anymore. I have to say, it's come so far in just over 10 years. But once it got to a certain point, then we started bringing in people that had decision-making power and financial resources to make it happen. It was pretty bare bones. I was talking to someone from Lafitte and Nickel today.
Oh, nice.
It was really, Greenway was very bare bones. And in fact, there was some debate within the planning community whether or not that was the right approach. It was just grass and a little bike path and some lights, and that was pretty much it. But the idea was, let's get something established to change people's minds about what this space is, and then we can go and layer on things, and that's exactly what we did do. Because $7.8 million to build 2.6 miles of greenways is not very much, especially in today's dollars.
For us, it was very much like, okay, who owns this land? What can we do? It was reclaimed water bottom. What we found out was the state actually owns that land at Bucktown Harbor. And so then we realized, okay, now we have to go to Baton Rouge and pitch this idea and see if they're okay with it. We've been leasing the land from the state to do recreation, but there hadn't really been anything out there. So it meant going to Baton Rouge and showing them the vision and saying, like, if we move in this direction, can that be included in our lease with you? And navigating some of the legal questions of, like, if I build the boardwalk, who owns it, who maintains it? Yeah. So you have to start, having those conversations and just making sure that you're thinking about all the things that have to be addressed. Yeah. And so that's what we did. The state land office was great, and said, yep, that's we're on board. You will build it. We still own the land. You're maintaining it, so it wasn't a bad deal for them. And we were bringing recreation to life on the free land, and that was really the value for us. We didn't have to go out and buy the property. It's the state's. So it does get complex, and there are usually a lot of entities you have to deal with. But for us, it wound up being a lease with the state.
We are an environmental program, so I had to ask, how do you ensure that intensive public access to these green spaces does not compromise the ecological resilience of the area?
So access is something we've talked a lot. We didn't talk about it as much with Bucktown as actually we did in some of the conversations on West End, which is a separate project. But here, it's automatically accessible to everyone because it literally is just over the levee. Mm-hmm. And so it's not gated off, it's not closed off in any way, so the access is phenomenal. We always, in everything we do, we definitely consider the impact on the environment. And so, for example, we originally were going to build the boardwalk into the marsh. And the more we thought about it, we're like, okay, how does the structure then affect the plants that don't get the same sunlight below it? We don't want to affect the marsh negatively. And so we explored, how maybe we don't go through the marsh anymore, because that really was the original thought, like have the marsh all around you. But then we were worried about what impact it would have on the plants by blocking the sunlight. And also for the creatures that live in the marsh, is it going to be too invasive to have people like coming right through their home? So that's why we ultimately moved the boardwalk to the edge of the marsh, between the marsh and the lake, so it would be less invasive on the plants and the animals that live there. And so we do try to keep that in mind, all the time. It's a balance. It's a balance on creating things for people to enjoy, but making sure you're not going to negatively impact, the environment around you. Even also talking about a future phase, we want to have like a great lawn where you can have concerts and stuff. But the master plan and vision plan, and Moffitt worked with us on it. Moffitt and Nichols, having a great firm helps. We're like, okay, the stage would have to face out to the lake so that you're not blasting music back at neighborhoods. So just all of those things. You're thinking about the people who live around it, the animals, the plants, the whole thing.
What do you all do?
I mean, for us, it's similar. It's completely publicly accessible. Unlike, I love City Park. I live near City Park. I love Audubon Park. I guess Audubon Park, there's a lot of students kind of walking in. But the Greenway, there's no parking lots on the Greenway. It's not like a regional destination park, kind of like Lafreniere. It's just people from the neighborhood. It's a 2.5 mile long public plaza. And most of the people that use it are either using it to get somewhere as a transportation corridor, or they're just walking their dogs or coming to check out what's happening from the neighborhoods. So it's completely publicly accessible. There's no fences. There aren't even any parking lots on there, so it's just in the neighborhood. The more people, the better. It's not going to get trampled anytime soon, so to speak, by too many people. Most people stay on the bike path. We're starting to build out more things like rain gardens and pollinator meadows and things like that. So it's kind of, and plus because people are walking and biking, you can take, 25, 50, 100 times as many people on the Greenway without all the environmental impacts and urban design impacts too of having to build a parking lot for, I've got a picture in my mind, council member, of like people saying, oh, well, we're gonna, outdoor amphitheater, we're gonna need 1,800 parking spaces or whatever, so it doesn't come into my neighborhood, and it gives me the urban design jitters, because I'm like, yeah, but if you build an 1,800 spot parking lot, it's gonna look like a Costco parking lot instead of this beautiful thing that you've got going. So the accessibility, we welcome, it's publicly accessible, and we welcome as many people as possible because it doesn't degrade the environment.
Talk about maybe a little about the water management and infrastructure related to your projects. I think that both of them kind of have enhanced local water management and flood mitigation, which are big issues here in our region. So maybe share a few specific examples of how your project has worked with water.
So the peninsula of land is obviously surrounded by water. It's outside of our levee protection system. So this one we don't use for any kind of water retention. We do that at some of our parks. Like we literally have Pontiff Park is a recreational playground. You know, it has ball fields and a gym, and it has a small berm levee around it. And in heavy rain, it actually becomes a pond. And we store water there because the neighborhood and the old infrastructure doesn't have really a place for the water to go. So this site, because it's outside of the levee protection system, we don't use it for retention, but we do stormwater management. And so again, having great landscape architects involved, you want to make sure that anything on site, you know, before it's running off into the lake, we're very specific about the plantings and the things that can kind of filter it before it's going out into the lake to make sure we're not having any kind of negative impact. The parking has been a discussion because I didn't want concrete, and we have some asphalt out there now. We're actually breaking some of the asphalt up to make room for the playground. But all of the future parking is permeable. And so like there's one additional space we used rock. I know there are other things that I've seen at other recreational kind of facilities where it's like reinforced grass so that it looks like grass, even though it's going to be strong enough to take cars when you need it. That is way better when you go out and see that and it feels like grass or rocks, you know, instead of Costco parking lot. So that's a big part of the discussion.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's such a cool project, by the way. I just went out and has anybody been out to the Living Shoreline?
Oh, cool.
A couple people.
Good deal.
Such a cool project. It is an inspiration to the stuff that we're doing in New Orleans. Not that we're all not one community, but when I was out there, I was like, this is super cool. So thank you for bringing that to the community. We do lots of stormwater management on the Greenway too. We're trying to do more. It's a long topic, but when the Greenway was built in 2015, it was built with bioswales that run alongside the bike path, which is essentially a ditch with a drain at the bottom of it. So when rain falls on the Greenway, instead of rushing into the stormwater system, it ponds on the Greenway in these linear bioswales, and slowly over a course of about 24 to 48 hours, drips back into the system. So most of it still goes back into the system. We're not really reducing the total volume, but we're reducing we're extending the time it takes for the water to go into the system, which is why we have flooding in New Orleans and Jefferson Parish, which is the capacity of our stormwater management system can't handle all that water. So if you remember during COVID, at least at the beginning, the flatten the curve, right? We try to flatten the curve. So X millions of gallons go into the system. Well, if it all goes in 1 hour, that's a lot different than it all going in over 24 to 48 hours. So we've got these bioswales on the Greenway, water lands on it. It feeds all of the 786 native cypress trees we planted on the Greenway. It cleans up the water a little bit, it reduces a little bit, and then it meters it back into the system slowly over a 24 to 48 hour period. We have a bigger concept, which Moffett Nickel team is helping us with, which is actually to take water off of the neighborhood adjacent streets and into the Greenway. So right now it's just capturing water that lands in the Greenway, and that is having some minor effect on neighborhood flooding because it's reducing reducing the burden on the system and probably having some kind of minor effect along the way. But if we could if water on your street would literally flow right off when it rains and into the Greenway, either into surface grade elements or subsurface, which is gigantic tanks we would build under the Greenway, that could significantly reduce flooding from mid-city to Treme and even the CBD, because all the water that lands in the CBD actually runs in a gigantic culvert alongside the Lafitte Greenway all the way to the pumping station at Broad Street and the Greenway, and then out the Orleans, 17th Street, Orleans, London. One of the three outflow.
17th, yeah.
Is it?
17th's the one closest to Jefferson.
Yeah.
And then.
So I think this one is the one
London.
to the right of this, between 17th Street and
Yeah.
the one that runs along the west side of City Park, that canal. So it actually goes out, all the water that lands on the Greenway in the downtown New Orleans does go out into like Pontchartrain
That's interesting.
at or next to the project she was just showing.
Cool.
So our projects actually improve water quality in Lake Pontchartrain.
That's really cool. And I know we're theoretically in Jefferson and Orleans,
Yeah.
but there's so much connectivity. And so like at the lake at Bucktown, we don't envision everybody coming on cars because ultimately we're going to connect the Bucktown Jefferson side with a pedestrian and bike bridge that will go over the 17th Street Canal that links to the New Orleans lakefront. And so like anybody coming from that area, you can take your bike, you can walk, so you don't need all the parking, And same thing when you were talking about the completion of the Greenway, bringing it to Canal Street means everybody on the Old Metairie, side, I can take my bike from my house, get to Canal Street, and then get into New Orleans on the Greenway.
Yep.
I mean, that connectivity is really exciting.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I can't vote on it, but I would definitely encourage support. That's cool.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little, I had one more question, but now I'm could you briefly talk about maybe like the 5 most active people or organizations that you're partnering with right now on these projects? Because I've heard you talk about, is it a landscape firm, maybe an urban planner in there too? Because it's not everything isn't in-house.
Nothing is in-house because you're looking at 50% of Lafitte Greenway partnership right here. There's one other person on our team. And the budget cut environment that we're in federally and also locally, at least in the case of City of New Orleans, is having an effect on our operations, which is another side of the story. So I talk about partnerships because it's true and because it's cool to talk about partnerships. It's also, we cannot do what we do without partnerships. So for example, with the trees, the 765 trees we planted, we do that all in partnership with our tree planting partner, which is called Soul. We do stormwater management with landscape contractors like Mastodon, which is a local black female-owned landscape contracting firm that specializes in green infrastructure. We do the farmers market. We don't even do the farmers market. They just do it on the farmers market. They just do it on the Greenway. So we say they're a partner, and we do marketing with them and that kind of thing. But we don't help them pull off the farmers market. We work very closely with NORD, the Recreation Department, which is a city department that technically manages the Greenway. By the way, the Greenway is a city-owned park, and we're, at the end of the day, just a nonprofit that loves the Greenway and wants to make it better. There's a world in which that role changes through some conversations we're having with the city, but at the end of the day, we're just a 2-person nonprofit that cares about the Greenway, and it's owned and maintained and managed by the city. So the city is our biggest kind of institutional partner, and we've got new partnerships with community groups that represent neighborhoods around the Greenway, because as an urban planner, I don't see this as a park project. I see this as a city-making project that is benefiting the whole. This is a project to make the whole city better. And so we got to work with our community partners in the neighborhoods that are adjacent to the Greenway.
Yeah. So in the Bucktown case, it's owned by the state and leased by Jefferson. It is at one of our recreational sites. So the recreation department is probably our biggest boots on the ground help. If we're doing anything, it's our recreational department that's helping to get it done and to maintain it. So recreation is definitely probably the first. Jefferson Beautification is one of our beautification groups, and they were the ones that started Sunset on the Boardwalk. I mean, so you have those kinds of organizations that create activity at the site because they're not coming out to to see government or anything, but groups of people who are active in the community deciding they're going to hold an event here brings all of their people out to the site. And so groups who want to do things here are then, our next biggest partner. Land and Water Conservation Fund, that program at the state has been phenomenal because it really allows us to submit projects to them and try and, again, double our money so that we can continue building things out at this site. And so grant partners, are really significant. Landscape architects, master naturalists, all of those people who are great out in the environment. Master naturalists have donated time to come out and plant. We've and actually Pontchartrain Conservancy has been great too because they'll do cleanups out at the lake and plantings and kind of do those two things in conjunction. So lots of grassroots organizations, and then. Maybe one of the biggest that surprised me, NOAA. When I think of NOAA, I think of them telling me about hurricanes and what the hurricane season is going to look like. But the federal national director of NOAA came down when we were looking at the living shoreline, and he's like, "Look, this is another concept of resilience because if the rocks in front of the levee take the wave action from a hurricane, it ultimately will probably lengthen the life of our levees." So he's like, this could be a smart way for us to think about resilience and how we do this in the future, because right now we put the rock at the edge of the levee, but it's right there. So, the water is scouring the sand on the other side of the rock. And so the idea is if we put the rock further out, it really gives the speed bump to the wave before it's hitting the levee, before it's, scouring. So it was something that NOAA got involved with and actually helped fund that last amount of money we needed for the living shoreline. And I wouldn't have thought of them as a partner, but they got us across the finish line.
I was recently out on the shoreline with my kids biking on a Sunday afternoon that was really windy, and we watched some paddlers go out.
Yes.
And it is amazing what the first line of rocks can do, because there was definitely more texture. I took a picture if anyone wants to see it later. I meant to put it into one of my lectures. And then behind that, just like you think of a berry.
The creativity of bringing the space to life, it allows you to explore things like that. But when you hit a dead end, like with oyster shells, one of the things that it brought to fruition was Glass Half Full. So Glass Half Full, who's our recycling partner also, but they really stepped in, and the glass bottles, which I know at my house are plentiful with wine bottles that go into the recycling, and then the Glass Half Full folks are turning it into sand, and they have multiple different varieties of sand. So the one that's the coastal grade that they create, we've been out there putting that sand into coffee sacks because they're biodegradable, and putting those into the shoreline, and ultimately, restoring the coast there. So oyster shells didn't work, but recycling all of our glass bottles is. So just really, I love the exploration of, how do we bring all these partners to the table, and so that's one I've been really excited about.
Who are your scientific partners right now out there? Is there anyone doing experiments or monitoring?
Glass Half Full they have their own grants, and so they're doing some things for themselves, but just using our site. We do have monitoring of our marsh, Pontchartrain Basin, or Lake Pontchartrain Conservancy now. They monitor, along with UNO, had a hand in monitoring how the marsh area itself is changing. It's becoming more brackish, but they're monitoring that marsh site. So right now, those are the two.
Any more questions? With the Lafitte Greenway, do you guys know how many people are like using it to replace transportation by a car versus just recreational? Like, do you guys have statistics?
That's a very good question.
That's a great question.
Don't
Yeah.
know the answer. We have a counter under the Greenway at Galvez Street, which is right in the middle, that can determine whether it's a cyclist or a pedestrian somehow. But we don't have data on, we've been asked like, how many people are locals versus tourists? How many people are just biking on through to go to their job in the French Quarter versus taking a stroll? Coming and biking in from the Jefferson Parish living shoreline onto the Greenway and back for, we don't know that. There's some pretty sophisticated data out there that's a little scary, by the way, that the metadata from your cell phone, they can literally track crazy stuff. They use it for like retail development, like shopping centers, which you've tried to get access to, but the Greenway is so small, it can't, it's not, what's that word? Like, it's not a fine enough calibration of the cell phone signal to know if you're coming to the Greenway or you're just coming a block away versus a Costco where it's easier to do that. So don't have those answers, but your question's about transportation versus, what exactly was your question again? Because I can just tell you anecdotally.
Transportation, if it's like people are using it to bike and walk more than taking their cars.
Oh, I see. Are we like getting people out of their cars? That's a good question. We don't have any data on that. We have so the counters under the Greenway are installed and monitored by UNO Transportation Institute, and they do cool stuff where they can kind of extrapolate something. Answer is don't know, but we've done some stuff kind of close, like, hey, there's this many trips on the Greenway. That's this many tons of carbon that's been averted if all of those trips have been done by cars. This is how many calories people have burned. This is how many beignets it would take to equal that many calories.
That's
So
a cool
we have some
statistic.
fun stats out there that you can go online. It's called Count Dat, as if we don't have enough things named DAT. It's called Count Dat, and it's from UNO. And another one of our partners, which is Bike Easy, the bicycle advocacy organization. But we've been submitting some grants to Entergy to get some new counters that would be real-time counters. We don't want digital signage on the Greenway. These would be like LCDs, so like when you bike past it, it trips the wire and says you're the 351st person today, and this is how many tons of carbon's been sequestered in this year. So we're trying to get new signage and new technology that would be able to answer some of those questions better.
Are there ways that students can donate or volunteer or get involved? And how do we find that?
Yeah, for us, you definitely can. There was one last slide there after the that I didn't want to show you because I didn't want to. But yes, you can get involved. You can volunteer. You can go to our website, LafitteGreenway.org, click Get Involved. We do all kinds of volunteer stuff. We do a monthly volunteer event. So just go to LafitteGreenway.org, see all of our stuff. We've got a public-facing calendar, and get involved.
Not as much with Bucktown right now because it's one of our recreational properties. You know, generally the recreation department maintains it, but the opportunities that we have are usually like cleanups because we go in once a year and clean in the marsh in the winter time. So actually be on the lookout for it because as it's winter, it's a better time to go in, and we pick out all of the trash because those outfall canals that we were talking about that drain really the rainwater off the streets, it goes through a pumping station and there's screening, but there's still trash that gets out. And then it's in the lake and we find it washes into the marsh. So going out in the marsh over the winter, we'll be happy to send, like, hey, this will be the weekend, look on social media. But it's usually cleanups and.
Do you have an Instagram? Or like
not for Bucktown. So I have one that I will put it on, and Mallory actually, who's here, handles all of my Instagram and Facebook and stuff. So we'll definitely have it on there. Anything we're doing out at Bucktown, any plantings, because we do tree plantings, native cypress, and actually, if you're on the street, but over the levee, on the people side, on the land side, you'll actually see the cypress trees being grown. It's on the Brown Foundation's land. And they are growing the cypress trees that will ultimately go out at the site and other places in the environment. So I know they have volunteers at the site helping to grow the cypress trees as well. But look on social media, in our case, for the opportunities when we're like, hey, we're going to go clean up this weekend, we're going to plant trees. So it's more sporadic for us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for volunteering. It's super cool when you're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Any chance y'all are looking for freshly graduated bachelor students?
That's what I was going to ask. Like, what's your background and where could we plug you in?
I'll do some data science for you guys.
That would be great. We are hoping to hire a part-time communications coordinator to help tell our story better. So stay on the lookout for that. If you get on our email list, you'll get the announcement for that. Data science things could be cool. I could also refer you to some of our partners that do that kind of thing, like Transportation Institute.
Cool. That's what I'll reach out.
Yeah.
For us too, Jefferson Parish, it's jeffparish.gov is the website. We've got 40 different departments, so depending on like where you fit, we are always looking for good people. We have a coastal zone, manager, floodplain manager, Maggie Talley, who's great. So her department is one place that's awesome. Environmental affairs. I mean, all of those departments have in-house people that do a tremendous amount of stuff. So, and we're always hiring.
Cool. That's nice. Thank you.
This is a great lead to my final question, which was for college students interested in careers in urban planning and environmental management and public service, what are these 3 non-traditional skills? So not the degree, but what are the 3 non-traditional skills that you would recommend they prioritize?
3 non-traditional skills. That's a good question. I had a really circuitous route. I will say I went to college, I went to law school, and my second year into the 3 of law school, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. It was interesting. And ultimately, my parents were like, finish the degree, you can always fall back on this. But it wasn't my passion. I firmly believe if you find something you're passionate about and you're interested in, pursue that. It makes such a difference. So I went from law school to journalism and was a reporter and anchor on different stations in New Orleans and elsewhere. And then got into government in kind of a roundabout way. But it's always the consistent thing was following my passion, which for me is learning something new every day. So that, in television, it was a story that I did every day and whatever that was. So I think that non-traditional skill is curiosity and following that and seeing where that leads you. I always love to write, and so that was either going to bring me to law or journalism, or now what I'm doing in government, legislating, and I don't know, curiosity, writing, and then communication, because there's such an element of every day putting out something. Like the last thing I posted just earlier today, there's a public meeting tonight, and it's on rail relocation. And I just found out about it this morning, but I was like, okay, that's a meeting, so it's putting out there for anyone on social media to know what's happening and communicating that well in a way that they find interesting and, and has some viewer benefit. That was always the question in television, like, what is the viewer benefit to the story? Not that it's flash and trash, but like, what is somebody really going to take from this? So we try to do that in our social media too. What's the benefit for, you don't care if I'm at a meeting, but what would you take from the meeting, So.
Those are all really good. I would echo all those. For me, quick thing on my journey was my background's in urban planning. I went to UNO, and then I went to USC in LA, and I felt like I didn't have enough technical knowledge. I felt this feeling that I needed to become a technician of some kind. I needed to know more about data science or the environment or the land use law or something. And so I kind of beat myself up about that and got into urban design and started learning the software to do cool renderings like the one the council member was showing. And then along the way I realized what is missing is somebody that can put all those pieces together and tell the data scientist and the architect and everybody else, like, this is the vision. Bring them together and cut them loose to do their thing. And that was a skill that I would like to think I have. And we were just in a meeting this morning, actually, with Moffett and Nickel, where there was the people talking about the water, there was our partners in Treme talking about what they needed, there were some landowners, but like, they were kind of all dancing around it until I was able to say, like, but this is, what I'm hearing is this is the idea. We're gonna look at this site to do these specific things, and everyone was like, yeah, that's what we need to do. So I've kind of cut loose with this, what's the word, beating myself up about not having a PhD in some technical thing. I'm like, somebody's got to be able to have a vision and bring people around the table to come up with it. So to that end, it's definitely intellectual curiosity, it's listening, showing up. We just had, I'm gonna get good news, I'm gonna knock Tulane for a minute.
Yes.
Tulane students were supposed to come do a volunteer event about 6 weeks ago. We had it was a big thing. We were gonna build something on the Greenway. There was like 50, I think, or more, 150, something like that. Students that were supposed to come. Only 3 came.
Oh, come on.
We didn't get the project done. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't probably have said the name of the organization. but okay. But I sent them a bill, actually. I said, this is what it cost us to do everything on our own a second time. And I'd never done anything like that before. But I was like, you guys cost us time. So, and the kids that did show, we were like, hey, good to know you, what's your name? And they were interested in work. So do it. 80% of success in life, maybe more, is just doing what you said you were going to do.
Yes.
And so especially when you're young and you're trying to break through to opportunities, I would say easy to set yourself apart by just doing the thing you say you're going to do. Follow up with that email, show up to the event, say thank you after the thing.
Yeah.
It goes a long, long way.
Great advice.
That was the perfect
Great
ending.
advice.
I want to say thank you
Yeah.
for coming and talking
is
with
awesome.
us today. Both Jason. We have
Yeah.
little gifts of our appreciation.
This is cool. Thank you. Oh, this is awesome.
Beautiful.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
All of you for being here.
Honored to be on stage with you. Thank you. I love to stay in touch.
definitely want